stuck into it. This is a really great panel about how you can make it all happen yourself. And I welcome the panel, and I welcome Marcus Teague, our MC.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Face the Music conference, 10 o'clock in the morning. It's a very unmusical time of the morning, but perhaps also the most DIY time of the morning. We're at the DIY panel. It's called With a Little Help from Some Friends. I'll get started just by introducing everyone. Over at the end, we've got Eric Moore and Stu Mackenzie from the band King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. They're self-managed to run a label, manage other bands, pretty much do it all themselves. Next to those guys, we've got Zach Abrams. He runs Vice Royalty, a boutique artist management and music service provider. Specialises in online PR and music blog servicing. Next to him, we've got Jayce Varden, who's the co-founder of PledgeMusic, a fan platform that specialises in crowdfunding and pre-order campaigns. Then we've got Stacey Piggot, Publicist to the Stars, the likes of the Jezebels, Augie March, the Drones, Cog, Bon Iver, and has just released a book called Blow Your Own Trumpet, A Musician's Guide to Publicity and Airplay. And then to my left, colleague and editor of the Age EG Entertainment Guide, Music and Art section, Marty Boulton. And I thought I'd start by directing the first question to the band end of the panel. Did you find yourselves in a DIY position out of a business decision or a necessity?
I think it was definitely a bit of both. At the start, we always knew that we wanted to kind of have a crack at just doing everything ourselves, but it was, just like any band, when you sort of start out, it's not like, you're going to have help from anyone else. You just have to kind of leap out into the open and have a crack at it, and that's what we sort of did. But we always knew that we wanted to do it ourselves without the help of a label or anything.
When you were, I guess, talking along those lines, did you think or consider that there were people like the other guys in the panel that had tools that would be available to you to be a DIY artist, but also have help around you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think, like you talk about, like, publicity is that was kind of really important early on. We sort of knew that we needed to get our name out there a bit and find someone who could help us do that. And then also we found an agent as well. So you kind of piece it together with all the other tools around you, and but just keeping it amongst the band. And that's the other thing, like, you find that everyone in the band can kind of fill a role themselves. You might have someone who's good at doing the artwork, posters, that sort of thing, or someone who's good at picking up the phone and booking a show, and that's kind of just how we did it.
And there's 7 of us too, so it's a bit easy.
Yeah.
And did you, I suppose, have to learn these things because you didn't know how to do them, or were you sort of just making it up as you went?
I think it was also an excuse to learn them. Like, we were really interested in doing that kind of thing, so it was a good reason to.
Yeah, everything we kind of, like, at the start we knew absolutely nothing, and we probably still don't, but you just kind of learn as you go along.
Marty, when a band like this would come to you to try and kind of just out of the blue, here we are, we've got a CD, can we get in the paper? Do you consider whether they're a DIY artist or whether they have a publicist and a record label and distribution, all that sort of stuff, or is it just based on the music that you hear?
It's largely based on the music, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I love it when you come across a band that is a bit DIY. That might have something to do with the fact that many years ago I tried to do that myself, a bit of DIY, and sort of enjoyed it. So I've got a little bit of a feeling about the challenges that are involved, but also the positives that can come out of that, because it can put a real unique spin on a band. These guys are terrific to have on the panel, I reckon, because they're a perfect example at the moment of a band that's doing it really well. There was a few things I know when I first heard of these guys. Actually, I think first time I heard of them was actually seeing them live. Someone told me about them. So there was like a little trickle-down effect with these guys. So sort of heard about them, saw them. The album artwork, you can't miss it. It's just that's a nice thing. And you guys said you did that all yourselves?
Well, yeah, it was just kind of a friend of a friend sort of
Yeah.
thing. Just had a mate who was just a crazy sort of designer and
Yeah.
artist, and we just asked him.
Yeah, and it stands out. So there was, if I can keep using these guys as an example, there was a whole bunch of things that sort of happened around the same time, and they got involved in, you know, even a small gig down the coast, a little warm-up gig for another festival. So their name was out there. You keep hearing it. Then the record comes along at the right time after, you know, these gigs, and yeah, a bit of buzz building around them. So yes, to get back to the question, yeah, I think a bit of DIY is an attractive thing. But having said that, having a publicist like Stacey behind a band is a whole different kettle of fish, and it makes a whole. Yeah. It presents a whole different picture of a band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I still started like that though, so it's in that regard what the guys are doing is exactly what I did with no experience. I started working with the Waifs after meeting Donna Simpson when I was waitressing at a restaurant in Sydney, and I was working as a freelance journalist, and she suggested that I do some PR for them on an album that they had coming out, and at that point they were self-distributed, self-booked, self-managed and self-publicised. So I got a pen and a pad and I went and sat in the news agency in Bondi and wrote down names and numbers of newspapers and started calling people. I had no music industry experience and no publicity experience. And I actually remember calling Ian Shedden from The Australian to do a story about them, and I rang him, straight to the top, why not? I rang him probably every second day, and I emailed him every first day for about 3 weeks, and he didn't call me back, and then he finally picked up, and I got so nervous I almost hung up the phone. It was like, you know, winning a radio competition, and I said, you know, it's Stacey Piggot, and he just let out this massive sigh, like, what do you want? And I said, you know, that I wanted to invite him to this show, and he said if he wanted to come, he'll come. And I said, well, you can't because it's sold out. And his ears sort of, you know, pricked up. I said, if you want to come, you need to let me know so I can put you on the guest list. And he said, you know, I've never heard of this band, and how can they be on their third record and selling out the Metro when I've never heard of them? And I said, well, you've heard of them now, so you should come. And I said to him, you know, if you don't like this band when you see them, I will never ring you again. And he just laughed. He said, you know, Stacey Piggot, how long have you been a music publicist for? And I went, this is the first band I've worked with. And he went, you know, it could be a very short career for you, but I will come to your show, so you stop calling me. And we were sort of talking about this. This was, you know, before, you know, the internet made everything so much easier. And he came to the show, and the next morning, I think it was on a Sunday morning, he emailed me really early in the morning wanting to do an interview with this band because he was blown away by how good they were and the fact that they'd done all this stuff on their own, and that, you know, back in the 1500s, that was a really weird thing to do because there wasn't a lot of bands who were doing that at the time. And we got a massive big spread in the Australian because of that. And the lesson, you know, someone asked me the other day, like, where's that line? Where do you draw that line between being too pushy and not pushy enough? And to me, ringing someone like that, that situation could have turned out to be, you know, it was pretty humiliating, but I was too naive to know any different. But I had a band who was talented enough to back it up. So if you're talented, you can humiliate yourself at any point because you're talented. If you don't have the talent and you don't have the music there, you're just going to humiliate yourself. So
that's a good mix. That's the mix, I think.
Yeah.
To do it yourself, and that's a very good mix.
Well, I think it's about taking the initiative as well, isn't it? And sort of believing
no one's
in
going to
yourself.
call you. That's the thing. Like, you know, those guys used to tour, and Vicky would ring a visitor centre in, you know, a town along the coast of Australia, and she would say, do you have a pub that plays music? And they'd say, yeah, we do. She'd get their number, she'd get their paper number and the local radio station number, and she would call, get stories, get a gig, you know, a couple of $100 and food and accommodation for the night. And then Donna would, you know, when they drive into that town, they'd drop a whole lot of CDs on consignment into the record store. And that's, you know, every cent they made, they put back into their career. And that's a really good kind of example of how you can, you know, and these guys are the same. You know, bands are doing it all the time. The difference between the bands that you hear who are independent is that they're picking up the phone, they're booking gigs, they're playing, they're writing, they're putting every cent they get back into pressing, They're calling community radio stations, they're calling, you know, their local papers and local street press and local onlines, and they're getting support from people who want to know about it, rather than, you know, going straight to the top and hustling, you know, 1 or 2 media outlets and then becoming disillusioned because those people, you know, are too busy writing about Radiohead and Coldplay.
So DIY isn't shorthand for being separate from the business or independent from the business. It's about running an independent business.
I think it's about having initiative, to be honest. You know, like the reason I did that book is because I talked to a lot of bands, and their whole thing is that no label wants to sign us, no agent wants to sign us, you know, we can't get on festivals, we can't. And the whole vibe of that conversation is coming from your expectation on other people to make this happen for you. And it's just not how it happens. You've got to, you know, make it happen for yourself. And then once it's happening, those other people will come on board to enhance it. And I think once you look at that, you know, once you get into the point where, you know, you're so busy with other things, you've exhausted all of the band members in your band for the skills that they have, and you need those support parties, then you start looking at paying people to do that. But until that point, you know, you should be doing it internally and saving your money and making a cost, you know, viable business. Because it's a business.
Zach, you look after the likes of Kimbra, or you've worked with the likes of Kimbra and Bertie Blackman, as well as a great many others. Can you explain some of the tools that you use that are at DIY Muso's disposal that perhaps they wouldn't be aware of?
Absolutely. I was actually just thinking, Stacey just picked up on a really good point. When I start working with a band, I consult with them. And obviously, solo artists have it a little bit hard because you've got to take on all the roles yourselves. But if you're working with someone like these guys, for instance, you sit down and you go, who's good at what? Who's the best at social media? Who's the best at writing? Who's confident writing? You're going to look after the Twitter. You're going to look after so-and-so's a great photographer. You're going to look after the band Instagram and divvy up those roles. Solo artists, as I say, they have it a little bit tougher. Someone fortunate with someone like Kimbra or Bertie, who have other outlets like art and they're quite good writers and photographers themselves. They are able to take on all of the tools. But look, social media, I think, has just become an enormous part of the publicity makeup. And I think all independent artists should be on a minimum of Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Instagram at this point. And then if you're nailing those, then you should start looking at other bits and pieces like Vimeo, Bandcamps, that kind of thing as well. It sounds like a lot, but the thing is there are tools out there like something like TweetDeck that is going to let you plan tweets. You're going to be able to schedule them. You can run searches for your mentions of yourself or mentions of your singles or your music video. Make sure that you are retweeting. You only really need to spend 15 minutes a day on each network, or 10 minutes a day, just basically being your own media monitoring. You don't have to pay for monitoring like with traditional media. It costs a fortune. You can use things like TweetDeck, like EdgeRank on Facebook, which is going to tell you the best day to be updating your fan page, the best time. You know, you should be looking at your Facebook analytics and going, what do my fans, and it differs for everybody, what do my fans like the most? Do they like it when I post photos, when I post videos, memes, whatever it is? So yeah, there's a whole set of tools out there that are going to enhance your social media experience and make it more effective, and the majority of them are free. Google Alerts is free, TweetDeck is free, EdgeRank is free to try. I use it professionally, and I've never subscribed. The free version, the trial version, does wonders. So really, I think when you look at the numbers of people that are on social media, and I think Facebook alone is like 11.5 million. 55% of Australians are on Facebook at this present time. That doesn't even take into account the other networks as well, particularly things like Twitter, where you do get a lot of tastemakers and early adopters and influencers. It's so crucial as an independent artist to be making the most of your landscape online and getting the word out.
Is it a bit daunting for artists to think that all that work and time is taking away time from them actually making music?
Definitely, and you always have the same conversation with everyone. I remember having it with Kimbra about 2 years ago, and Bertie about 3 years ago. The initial response is, why would people care? Like, why do I need a Twitter? They don't initially. A lot of artists don't understand. They would much rather be just working on the music and doing their thing, and leave the media to the journalists and that sort of thing. But it's always been the same experience. As soon as people begin to use it and begin to interact, it does become very addictive, and you find out that it's not half as scary as it seems interacting with your fans, and it actually becomes heaps of fun. And then it's always at a point where at a point in time the training wheels come off, and I don't even have to check what Kimber's doing on Facebook or Twitter these days. She's just it's become part of her daily routine, and it runs itself and continues to grow. And always, if you do your own Twitter, and I'm sure that, there are a lot of bands out there that don't, and they hire people to run social media for them. And like, kids are savvy. They know the difference between a publicist doing it or a manager doing it and the band themselves. They really want to interact with you guys on a intimate level. And it is scary revealing parts of your personality that perhaps you weren't comfortable initially with. But if you give it a go, I think, 9 times out of 10, you're going to find that it's much easier than it seems, and it's a lot of fun as well.
Jayce, do bands come to you with the sole premise of wanting to grow their audience?
Not always, but we quickly point out that that's a great ancillary benefit of doing a crowdfunded or a pre-tailing or a direct-to-fan campaign. Raising the required target amount that you just set is one accomplishment, but from that, you've grown a fan base. You've used this kind of marketing platform as a way of not just funding something or not just raising money, but for growing your fan base and rewarding them with an experience. And I think specifically, kind of that daunting idea, well, let's put it this way, for better or for worse, and to some extent, social media has erased mystique as being the main thing, because there is an expectation that because it's there, an artist will be engaging with their fans and kind of revealing these more intimate details that people are seeing on a regular basis anyhow. So to an extent, revealing part of your process, be it the recording process or the touring process, and showing those backstage moments, those are the parts that the artist might feel, or us as musicians might feel, they're the mundane daily routine type things, but those are the points. Each of those updates is a marketing point of basically showing or capitalizing on that emotional connection that the fan has with the artist.
If I'm a DIY musician, probably don't have very much money, don't yet have a network around me, even to come to you guys to help me with a campaign or to find out what I'm doing, doesn't that still cost me money that is perhaps prohibitive?
So we tie our fate to the artist, as most crowdfunding platforms will. Unless the target is reached, there's no charge type of thing. We are relatively specific in the campaigns that we're going to launch. So we'll vet the process quite harshly in one sense, but honestly in the other sense. And if an artist is, in our opinion, not really ready for a crowdfunded campaign or a pre-sale campaign at that point, we help give them the tools that we feel can build the fan base to the point where doing a crowdfunded campaign could be useful. Oftentimes we'll have submissions that will say, well, we don't have an email list, we have 40 Facebook likes and no Twitter, but we want to raise $50,000. And our response is, you might not necessarily, well, we all need $50,000 right now. We could all use it at least. But here are some tools that we feel could help you grow your fan base, so that you could launch a meaningful project that has the best chance of success. So that would be data capture widgets, or a mail program to be able to conglomerate your email database and be able to message people properly, and help with that subject line optimization, or some basic tools to help start to grow the fan base. And then kind of through that process, we monitor the fan data that's been collected. And at the point when it's right, we'd say, all right, well, now at this point, with this many fans, with this much activity going on, we feel that you could shoot for a target of X amount of dollars. Is that something that could help you fund a 2-song EP or a 5-song EP, or help get you on the road?
Stace, do you find that bands come to you wanting to figure out how they publicise their bands, but perhaps don't have much cash to do so?
We do 2 things to kind of help that. One is we have a development slot for one. Actually, we have either 1 or 2 acts on our books at a time that we pretty much work for nothing, just costs of postage and stuff like that. And we do that, we commit to them for a 12-month period. So it allows us to give 12 months consistent press. That's what we did with the Jezebels. And we had them on that rate, like on that development slot for a couple of years because, you know, their manager was working hard, the distribution was working hard, the band was working amazingly hard. And
so you're more likely to do that when they've already got a little bit of a team around them?
No. I do it for bands that I like. It's more of a, to me, instead of giving money to, you know, charities or Support Act or JBC or anything like that, our time is more valuable than any money we could afford to give. So we allocate that time. It's kind of like our charity, I guess, where, you know, I pick a band who either I really like or the girls in the office really like. And sometimes it's one of our regular clients who is just having a bit of a tough time for whatever reason, and, you know, we'll put them on that. And we also do things specifically because of this situation. We have things that we run called therapy sessions, which is literally like a therapy session. So the artists will come in for an hour, they book it ahead of the time, they send through a list to me of things that they need help with or things that they need to troubleshoot or things that they're stuck on. And we can do it via Skype, phone, or they actually come in and sit on the couch. And we have people who come in regularly who are running their own PR campaigns, and they come in, you know, once a month or bi-weekly and go through. It's kind of like me sitting there and showing them what to do next and where to go and how to get past that point. And just, you know, things like, you know, what Zach was saying about Google Alerts and, you know, MailChimp programs and all these things that can make your life so easy that we use as professionals that don't cost us anything. To just show people what they can do, basically, you know, and little things like, you know, I'll still ring a regional paper and ring the reception and ask them who the entertainment editor is, because they change so much. It's not, you know, which is no different to a band ringing up, you know, the Age reception or Beat reception or Impress reception and asking who the best person to speak to is. So just little things like that, and they've been really, you know, great, because instead of a band, you know, paying someone else $2,000 or something like that to, you know, do a job that's not going to end up anywhere. They're learning, they're making contacts, they're in control of all of their feedback and their pitching, and they're not being prohibited by a third person who's not really 150% behind their campaign. So it's it's, to me, that kind of seemed like to educate people, it gives them the knowledge, I guess, to sustain a career, to get them to the point where they are financial enough to employ a publicist or a radio plugger or, you know, digital specialist. And it works really well. You know, it opens people's eyes and it gets them to the point where, you know, they're either too busy or they've got a good cash flow and they don't want the hassle of doing those things, rather than, you know, stepping into it and ending up in a world of trouble and financial pain, because it is incredibly stressful to rack up a bill with a publicist or a radio plugger or someone advertising in street press or anywhere like that. And not be able to pay it back. It creates bad vibes all around, and you just don't need it.
Zach?
I think like every publicist out there is going to be willing to be flexible with rates or take a job on pro bono if they're passionate about an artist. But also, it's like, again, it comes back to that thing of initiative. And if you're showing us that, and I'll often say, well, I love your band, it doesn't matter to me that you can't afford the rates or whatever, but I'm time poor because I've got other things on. If you can show me that you're going to put a lot of your own work into this independently, I'm happy to teach you what tools there are out there and give you even just introductions or connections if you need an email address or an email intro. I'm happy to play like a consulting role because I believe in what you're doing, until a point at which, you know, you do have a bit of funding behind you or what that, and even then, like, if I love a band, like, you know, I'll do it at half rate, quarter rate, anything like that. It's all about a question of passion, and I think that's like one of the most important things, one of the biggest advantages of being an independent artist as well, is that you do get to choose the people you work with. So if there are people out there, public radio pluggers, print publicists, digital people, bloggers, anyone, or even radio hosts that you guys think, I really like the way that they do their thing. If you can show them, get in touch and really, you know, without harassing them or whatever, but show them initiative that you're going to put in as much work, then people are always going to give you free advice and give you a leg up along the way.
And I think just as regards to initiative too, from a crowdfunding perspective, is that there sometimes can be the misconception that just throwing a project up there, there's some philanthropist that's going to come along and fund your entire project. And that's really not the purpose really behind it. It's to leverage your existing fan base and to take them and enable them to kind of spread the news of the project as well. Specifically, the way that we do it is through Facebook OAuthing and Twitter OAuthing, and kind of getting those fans that once they've made a transaction, once they've pledged for something, that they are then kind of the social viral marketeers of the project itself. But a lot of that, really comes down to is that initiative behind it and delivering the content, delivering the exclusive videos and tracks and photos and things to show that there's a meaningful process going on here.
From an editor's perspective, Marty, all that sort of stuff must come into play when you're deciding who to listen to, who to promote. There's a lot of information coming at editors and journalists and all that sort of stuff. And I guess when a band comes along that has some of these kind of skills in place, that must help cut through the noise.
It cuts through enormously. There's a huge amount of albums, both sort of DIY put together and more professionally at a higher level, that come across a daily newspaper music editor's desk, not just every week, but every day. Every day. And what Jayce was just saying, I suppose from our perspective, is it's quite often all those things have gone on, and if those ingredients have gone well, I get to see that at that level, and it does cut through. Like a video, a well put together bio, which doesn't need to go on and on. Quirky doesn't really go a long way, I'd say. It might catch your eye for a second, but it's ultimately it's going to come down to the guts of what's in that package, which is the music.
So no CDs baked in cakes or anything like that arriving?
We haven't got enough time to actually eat them really soon. But yeah, personally, I don't know, it might work for some people, I don't know about you guys, but yeah, quirky.
It's a time thing though, it's a time poor thing as well, like we advertised for a job, and it was very clear of submit your resume like this, blah blah blah, and got a package with bubbles in it and a paper resume that was wrapped around the bubbles, and all this stuff that was in the envelope. And to me, was just about to leave to travel up the coast and had to go through all these resumes, and to have to take that stuff with me, it irritated me straight away. And I said to Beck, who works with me, I was like, she's going, oh, that's really cute, and I went, I'm not even reading it. A, she can't, the person who's done this cannot follow instructions. So to me, that's like, whoa. B, they haven't thought that you're time poor and I'm going to have to carry all of this shit with me when I go somewhere. No, they're not even looking at the job. And from an editor's perspective, and even with Street Press or anyone, they have so much coming into their inbox, so much on their voicemail, and so much coming through them at the post. You need to make it very clear, this is what I've got, this is what we've got happening, this is when you can have it if you want it. Would you like it?
Timeliness, absolutely.
Bam. And all they've got to do is go, listen, I like it, I don't like it, I'm available at that time that you've put through. Yes, I want this, you sound great, awesome, thanks for that, please send through more information, or no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. And to me, that's like...
It's like being rehearsed. It's being... All those things that these guys have talked about, all of those elements, it's like rehearsing for your band, like a band rehearsal. It's like getting those things right so that when you do present it, it's like you're ready to go, you're good. It's like, we need this. If someone says, oh, well, we need a picture, bang, get the picture, have it ready to go.
And even like on a really practical point, even virtually, don't, if you're emailing an editor or a blogger or something like that, you do not want to bombard them with loads of attachments and things in the email. People do not want bios in Word doc form that's not going to be compatible with what they've got. It's like boil it down. Don't put MP3s in emails. You want it a succinct media kit on a Dropbox link or something like that you're just literally putting a hyperlink in. Get your bio down to 150 words and put it in the body of the email. If they want more information, they'll ask you. Don't send high-res photos until they ask for high-res photos. Have them on hand. But it's about convenience. Editors, especially popular blogs, are getting hundreds of submissions a day, and they won't look at your stuff if it's going to take them too long to open.
That's a very good point. Yeah. Because they will ask for it. If they're interested, they will come back to you and they will ask for those things.
But people also email, like editors say this all the time, and it's I can understand why people would do it if you've never done it before, because you would be a bit nervous. But people, you know, editors have said to me heaps that people will email them to ask if it's okay that they email them, which is just for them, like it's very polite, but for them it's another email. You know, it's like instead of just being able to respond to your email, they've got to respond to say, yes, you can email me, 2 more emails in their inbox and outbox, which when you're getting hundreds a day is crazy.
To address the King Gizzard guys as one amorphous entity, is there anything that you know now that you wish you knew then?
Yeah, I think like listening to all that stuff about social media and everything is definitely relevant, but also to an extent it's kind of, you can just abuse it, and overuse is just really bad as well. I think like we kind of definitely at the start made a conscious effort to like not be just everywhere all over the internet and like spamming people, and we just, it was, yeah, when we started it was like MySpace was still kind of a thing, but Facebook was also there, so we're like, oh, we'll just make a Facebook account. We didn't bother with MySpace or Twitter or anything. We just kind of left it there. We didn't like invite friends or like inbox people like our page. It just sat there, and we kind of just played gigs and started booking shows. And after a while, like more people would just kind of, I guess, search on the internet and find it. And then I think once people actually find it and are seeking it out, then they're in the palm of your hand.
So it's a symbiotic thing where it works, mirroring the live experience and the musical experience as well. They kind of feed off each other.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
And you look after a couple of bands now. You manage a couple of bands as well as run your own label. Do you apply those techniques or thoughts to the bands that you work with and with your label?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think it's all kind of, it all ties into one. Like everything, I've just learnt everything. I guess Gizzard was the first thing I did, so everything I learnt is kind of like off the back of that. But yeah, so I guess all those practices are kind of the same. But it's like what you said, it's making sure everything's succinct, and especially just with emails, like even asking for a show, just like, you just have to be as straightforward and as sort of, obviously be polite, but yeah, you don't have to like write a 1,000-word document with your bio and everything, or like if you're kind of already out there and if you're going to the venues and watching bands, and like people will start to hear about you in that way. And it's kind of just, it's a cliche, but it's like, you know, if you're not actually going to the venues or hanging out where you want to play, then you're probably not going to play there.
One of the, I guess, entire things about being DIY is money or lack of it. Is, I suppose, for a band at your level and your experience, is money something that you're trying to protect or trying to gain? Like, is it about managing what you already have, or are you trying to
I think we still put pretty much everything we make back into it.
Do you guys have day jobs still?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
You just kind of just do whatever you can, just beg, borrow, or steal,
But
in any way, just to kind of...
Are you advocating stealing?
Yeah.
But we've never had to borrow or anything, really. We've just kind of, you know, if we've got this much money, that's kind of how much we'll put into it.
But it's very true as well, like at the start, we would, you know, we'd got in touch with a few people and we're just like, look, we just can't pay you at all for like 2 years. And they're like, all right, we'll just help you out. And it's like people just help you, and it's like, well, we have no money, but, you know, we make good music, so... And they're like, yeah, okay. And that's kind of how it works.
You can do a lot of stuff with no money. I think you can do actually an incredible amount of stuff without spending any money. Like, we just finished recording an album and it didn't cost us anything. Like, not a cent. So, yeah.
Hopefully it makes a couple of million.
Yeah, hopefully.
It was on an old laptop, and I think you had like one microphone or something, so, yeah.
Were you aware, I guess when you were, or around that area of starting out, that there were guys like Zach and Jayce that sort of have tools that would be available to you to build with a team around you, as opposed to...
I probably wasn't aware, really.
Yeah.
Not to the extent, at least.
Like we had a bit of an idea, I guess. We'd played in bands previously, so we sort of, I guess we were a little bit cluey going into it, but not to the extent, you know, all we knew like at the very start, it's like, it's all in stages. Like, it's like, how the hell do we play Old Bar? Like, how do we get a gig there? And then you kind of get a gig there, and it's like, well, how do we play the Tote? And then you get a gig there, and then it all just becomes easier as you do it. But yeah, I just remember thinking 3 years ago, like, how the hell do we get played on community radio? Like, it's impossible. And then it just kind of, and then you're like, oh yeah, you just go give that guy a CD, and then you'll get played. So
one of the things that you touched on,
Not as hard as it sounds.
it's true. One of the things you touched on before, Stace, was that DIY used to mean something that you had to endure before you would get signed, and then a major label would take all your cares and issues away because they'd give you $1 million and send you to play on a roof in America somewhere or something. But one of the things you mentioned was that DIY is something that almost you can aspire to the point where you don't need any of that because you can generate the business around you enough. That
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bands that we've worked with who are on major labels, like big time commercial bigwig major labels, who are earning a lot less money than the bands that we work with who are independent. And it's the numbers game, you know. Are you better off selling, 10 or 20,000 records that you're getting $17 from each record from, and keeping your costs down because you're independent and you're managing your money, or are you better selling, 25 or 50,000 records at $2 a record when your recoupable costs are outrageous because you're paying for other people to make decisions on how that money's spent. It looks glamorous, and it's that same thing of, celebrity musos or pop star people who are everywhere and on the cover of magazines, but they can't sell out a 300-seat venue in Sydney. What you see doesn't necessarily translate into your bank account, and that's where you've got to weigh it up. I always think those lists of, pros and cons are always really good, and, the thing, there's pros and cons. If you sign with a label, you don't have that startup cash, but you've got to recoup it at some point. If you start with a label, you've got a whole national machine behind you rather than, one or two people doing your publicity. But if, James in Victoria isn't digging your music and he's got 7 other records to work on, then you're going to do nothing in Victoria. If, Sally in Queensland is loving it and doesn't care about the other 7 records that she should be working on, then you're going to have a really great space up there. But it's if you can find a good team who are directly accountable, I like the idea of a distribution company where you're having a meeting with the guy who owns it when you're talking about the distribution of your EP or your album, and you're having a meeting with the publicist or the radio plug or the digital specialist or the agent who owns their company. And if they stuff up, they're directly accountable. There's no blame of, Mark Down in Victoria, who was a national publicist for Victorian-based national magazines, only that was his kind of fault, but it should have really been up to James, who's looking after national television based out of South Australia, but national, it's just, there's no one who's accountable for it. And it gets to the point where if you're in complete control, you're in control of what you're spending, where you're spending it, and why you're spending it. And, as these guys said, they've made a whole record for nothing, whereas when they sell one album, they're making money. You go and you can have 150 grand thrown at your album recording in this amazing studio with some, big producer from the States, and it's going to take you 25 years to pay that back at $2 a record. So you've got to look at the fine print, and I think the mistake that bands make is that they feel that they need all these things and they are desperate for it at that time, so they're powerless to negotiate a good deal, and they don't read the fine print because they're too excited, and then 2 or 3 years down the track there's a massive regret.
It probably means that the bands learn the tools that they need to then come to you guys and know exactly what they want.
Well, it gives you power. I mean, education and knowledge in any sense of your life gives you power to, have better choices because you know what your options are. So I think, the more you do it yourself and the more you feel it out, the more powerful you are. There's some bands, Cat Empire is a really good example of a band who worked really hard independently and had really good stats behind them. They're, the deal that their manager negotiated is legendary in the industry as far as, milking everything you can out of a major label. So that's a band who did the hard yards and then used the label system to their advantage. The Jezebels got approached by nearly every label in the country. Why would they sign? You know, they've got a dedicated team around them who's achieving amazing things. They're on their way to, you know, superstardom, and it would be a cog in the wheel that would inhibit them and take money from them without actually having contributed anything to that point. So it would have been a really silly decision for them to do that at that point.
I just want to say the great thing about do it yourself, which is really the subject what we're talking about, quite apart from the fact that there are so many things you can do that don't cost a lot, is the network that these guys are talking about that you plug yourself into once you start doing those things, getting on the ground at gigs, being there, and the people that you meet. And if someone does enjoy listening to a CD or a gig, there is an amazing network within that sort of do-it-yourself framework where things get passed on. Word does get passed along very quickly, very quickly.
Plus they get to be awesome dudes that talk at conferences. We're approaching the end, or getting close to the end. All these guys are available to chat one-on-one if you want to go up and hassle them after. I think we have to wrap this up, but I'm sure all our panellists will be available to chat out in the foyer if you wanted to say hello. But thanks very much for coming to Face the Music and our DIY panel. Cheers.